Welcome, educators. Grab a seat. In today's explainer, I'm going to be putting on my instructional design professor hat to walk you through a complete and honestly transformative shift in how we approach curriculum planning. We're going to talk about moving away from topic-driven teaching and going all in on outcome-driven learning. If you've ever poured your heart into a lesson plan only to feel like it just didn't translate into long-term retention for your students, well, you are absolutely in the right place. We're doing a deep dive into the backward design framework, a truly proven method for making sure our instruction is purposeful, inclusive, and highly effective. Here's a quick look at our syllabus for today's workshop. We're going to cover the traditional planning trap, break down the three-step framework, look at authentic tasks and inclusion, explore student engagement using the WHERE approach, contrast this with the Addy and Kemp models, and finally, get real about criticisms in everyday implementation. Let's get right into it.
All right, Section 1, the traditional planning track.
Okay, let's start with literally the most frustrating question in all of education. Why do our students forget what we teach them? Think about it. So often, we plan units around these massive, broad topics, right? Like the American Revolution or fractions. And we fill our weeks with all sorts of activities, worksheets, and multiple choice test prep. But then, when we actually try to measure that learning a few months down the line, poof, it's evaporated. And the hard truth is, traditional busy work and topic-focused lessons might keep our classrooms occupied, but they completely fail to produce that durable, long-term knowledge retention we're really after. I love this quote because it hits the nail right on the head. A lack of durable, transferable learning occurs when we use a haphazard, topic-driven approach. You see this all the time when a textbook becomes the default starting point for course design. When we say to ourselves, well, I need to cover Chapter 4 this week, we are instantly trapping ourselves in a cycle of short-term memorization. We start throwing in activities just because they kind of fit the theme, rather than because they build a specific, measurable skill. And guys, if our only goal is just to get through the material, our students are going to tune out, and that learning simply will not last. So look at this stark contrast in how we sequence our planning. The traditional linear approach starts with the content, then moves to designing the lessons, and honestly, it treats the assessment as a total afterthought. You basically only find out at the very end of the unit if the students actually learned what you hoped they would. Backward design flips this entire process on its head. With this model, we figure out our desired outcomes first, we determine exactly how we'll assess those outcomes second, and only then do we sit down to plan the lessons. Moving right along to Section 2, the 3 core steps of backward design.
So this framework was developed by Grant Wiggins and Jay McTighe, and it hinges on these 3 absolute non-negotiables. Step 1, identify desired results. Essentially, what should our students know, understand, and actually be able to do? Step 2, determine acceptable evidence. How are we going to definitively know if they've hit those targets? And finally, Step 3, plan learning experiences. Notice that the actual day-to-day instructional activities, the lesson plans themselves, are planned last. That is completely intentional, to ensure every single minute of class time drives toward that final goal.
Let's make this super concrete with a classic example of a 5th grade nutrition unit. In the first column, our desired outcome isn't something vague like learn about food. No, it's highly specific. Students will use an understanding of nutrition to plan a balanced diet. Now, the middle column is our evidence. Instead of a standard test, it's an authentic assessment, where they have to design a 3-day menu for a camp. Finally, in the third column, we plan the activities, things like direct instruction, analyzing USDA pamphlets, and cooperative learning. Do you see how those activities directly feed the exact skills needed for that camp menu project? Literally, no time is wasted. And here's how this plays out in a real-world daily application. This is a backward design lesson plan template from Eureka Math. Look at Step 1. The objective is crystal clear. Students will compose and decompose to make a 10. Step 2, the evidence, is an exit ticket where they have to demonstrate this using concrete, pictorial, and abstract means. It's only after those are set that the teacher moves to Step 3, mapping out partner work using physical counting tools. It just goes to show this isn't just some high-level academic theory. It's an incredibly practical tool you can use for your Tuesday morning math class. Which brings us to Section 3, authentic tasks and inclusion. When we're working on Step 2, figuring out our acceptable evidence, we really have to push ourselves beyond standard quizzes. Those typical quizzes usually just promote rote memorization, basic labeling and test prep. Real, durable learning requires authentic performance tasks. For instance, the next generation science standards don't just ask a student to memorize the phases of the moon, they require them to develop and use a functional model. Building a working lunar cycle model with moving parts and explaining it to a peer, that's an authentic task. Filling in blanks on a mundane worksheet, not so much. And because we know exactly where our students need to end up, Backward design is a total game changer for classroom inclusion. It lets us plan deliberate, thoughtful scaffolding. If the final goal is demonstrating a math concept, like we saw in the Eureka Math example, we can differentiate the actual path they take to get there. We could set up a math salad bar where kids who need concrete objects can just go grab a reckon rack or some counting blocks. We can seamlessly weave in cooperative learning. The destination is exactly the same for every single student, but the vehicle they take to arrive there, we can tailor that to fit their unique learning needs. Let's move into Section 4, engaging our learners using the WHERE approach. Wiggins and McTighe came up with this brilliant acronym WHERE to make sure students aren't just passively sitting there receiving instruction. W means making sure students actually know where they are heading and why. H is for hooking their interest right from the jump. E is for exploring ideas and ensuring they are fully equipped to succeed. R means giving them the time to rehearse, revise, and refine their work before it gets graded. And the final E is for evaluation. When kids genuinely understand the why behind their performance tasks, their engagement just skyrockets. They're no longer just doing busy work. They are actively working toward a clear, meaningful goal. All right, Section 5. Let's zoom out a bit and contrast this with Addy and Kemp. As an instructional design professor, I always like to give a little academic context. All of these major systemic models share core elements, but they behave very differently in practice. Backward design is highly linear, condensed, and fiercely outcome-oriented. You really can't skip steps. Now, the Addy model, analyze, design, develop, implement, evaluate, is much more circular and highly flexible. It lets designers retrace their steps as new data comes in. Then you have the Kemp model, which is holistic. It has 9 stages that you can execute in a parallel fashion, with a huge emphasis on individual learner characteristics. So while backward design might be slightly less flexible than Addy or Kemp, that linear rigidity is honestly exactly what prevents traditional classroom teachers from falling back into that topic-driven trap. Finally, Section 6, criticisms and the realities of implementing this in your classroom. Let's be real, backward design definitely faces some valid criticisms. Because it relies so heavily on deductive reasoning, if you adhere to it too strictly, it can totally deplete your ability to improvise. What happens if a brilliant, unexpected, teachable moment pops up? A super rigid structure might accidentally stifle that. Plus, critics argue it assumes a fixed student potential. Like, what if a student is capable of going way beyond your planned desired result? Master teachers overcome these hurdles by treating the backward design framework as a roadmap, not a straitjacket. Keep your end goals clearly in sight for sure, but stay completely open to the creative, winding paths your students might take to reach them. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a challenge regarding your own curriculum planning habits. Remember, the textbook is a resource, it is not your syllabus. The next time you sit down to plan a unit, ask yourself a hard question. Are you just trying to fill up class time with activities, or are you truly architecting a path toward durable, long-term understanding? Start at the finish line, define your evidence, and then build the experiences that will get every single student there. Thank you so much for joining me in this masterclass, and happy planning.